I have watched this planet for an eternity, a silent observer to its endless cycles of creation and destruction. In my long memory, there are moments that stand out, moments of unimaginable power, of breathtaking and terrifying force. This is a journey into those moments, an exploration of Earth's most devastating catastrophes. We will venture into the heart of events that have reshaped landscapes and altered the course of civilizations. These are the stories of nature's unbridled fury, and at times the tragic consequences of human fallibility. They are tales of survival, loss, and the enduring spirit of life in the face of overwhelming odds. From the silent, frozen taiga of Siberia, shattered in an instant by a visitor from the cosmos, to the sun-drenched Caribbean Isles, smothered by a mountain's fiery breath, the forces at play are almost beyond comprehension. We will witness the collapse of entire societies, buried beneath volcanic ash, and trace the path of winds so violent they tear the very fabric of the land. This is not merely a chronicle of disaster, it is a testament to the raw, untamable power that courses through our world, a power that has both sculpted our planet and, on occasion, brought humanity to its knees. The stories you are about to witness are etched into the geological and historical record of this world. They serve as a humbling reminder of our place within a system far grander and more volatile than we often care to admit. There is a profound gravity to these events, a solemnity that demands our respect and our attention. For in understanding the past, in confronting the sheer scale of these catastrophes, we may better appreciate the delicate balance of our own existence and the ever-present potential for nature to remind us of its ultimate authority. The year is 1908. In the vast, remote wilderness of Siberia, along the Podkamennaya Tunguska River, the morning of June 30th dawns like any other. The air is still, filled only with the hum of insects and the distant calls of birds. The Evenki people, nomadic reindeer herders who have known this land for generations, go about their morning rituals, unaware that they are witnesses to the final moments of an ancient silence. The Earth, in its ceaseless journey through the cosmos, is about to have an unexpected and violent encounter. Suddenly, the tranquil sky is torn asunder. A colossal pillar of light, brighter than 1,000 suns, descends from the heavens. It is not a meteor streaking across the firmament, but a blinding, terrifying fireball, described by those who saw it from hundreds of kilometers away as a second sun. For those closer, it is an apparition of pure, searing energy, moving silently at first, a dreadful premonition hanging in the impossibly bright air. The world seems to hold its breath, caught in the surreal glare of this celestial intruder. Then comes the sound. A deafening, earth-shattering explosion, a roar that reverberates across 1,000 kilometers of wilderness. It is a sound unlike any heard before by human ears, the sound of an asteroid or comet fragment, some 60 to 100 meters across, disintegrating with unimaginable force several kilometers above the ground. The shockwave it unleashes is cataclysmic. It is not an impact crater that is formed, but something far stranger, a blast of superheated air and pressure that radiates outwards with the force of 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. The forest, a sprawling expanse of ancient taiga, is flattened in an instant. Over 80 million trees across an area of more than 2,000 square kilometers are snapped like twigs, their trunks all pointing away from a central, unseen epicenter. Reindeer herds are incinerated where they stand. The few humans in the immediate vicinity are thrown through the air, their tents set ablaze by the thermal pulse that precedes the shockwave. The heat is so intense it is felt hundreds of kilometers away. Seismic stations across Eurasia register the tremor. For days, the skies over Europe and Asia glow with an eerie luminescence, as dust and ice particles scattered high into the atmosphere reflect the sun's light long after dusk. It is a phenomenon so strange that people can read newspapers outdoors in the middle of the night in London. The scientific community is baffled, struggling to comprehend the source of such a widespread and mysterious event. The remoteness of the region means that the first scientific expedition does not reach the site for nearly 2 decades. What they find is a scene of profound and ordered devastation, a radial pattern of fallen trees, a butterfly of destruction, pointing to a moment of immense energy release. Yet there is no crater, no fragment of the object to be found. It is a ghost explosion, a mystery that would fuel scientific debate for a century to come. The Tunguska event, as it would come to be known, stands as a stark reminder of our planet's vulnerability. It is a testament to the fact that the greatest threats may not always arise from the Earth itself, but can arrive unannounced from the vast, dark emptiness of space. A near miss on a cosmic scale, which, had it occurred over a populated city just a few hours later, would have rewritten the history of the 20th century in fire and ash. We travel now to the turn of the 20th century, to the Caribbean island of Martinique. Here lies the city of Saint-Pierre, a bustling, sophisticated hub known as the Paris of the West Indies. Its vibrant culture, beautiful architecture, and prosperous trade make it the jewel of the French colonies. Overlooking this idyllic scene stands Mount Pelée, a volcano that has slumbered for decades, its lush, green slopes seen more as a picturesque backdrop than a menacing threat. But in the spring of 1902, the mountain began to stir. The warnings were subtle at first, then increasingly dire. Minor tremors shook the ground. Fumaroles, vents releasing sulfurous steam, began to appear on the mountain's flanks, spewing gas that suffocated birds in mid-flight. A fine gray ash started to dust the elegant streets of Saint-Pierre, a gentle but persistent reminder of the power stirring within the earth. The Rivière Blanche, a river flowing from the volcano, became a torrent of hot mud and debris, flooding a sugar mill and killing 24 workers. Despite these terrifying omens, the city's population remained. An upcoming election, coupled with reassurances from a commission appointed by the island's governor, convinced the nearly 30,000 residents that there was no immediate danger. They were told the mountain's activity was normal, that the deep valleys surrounding the volcano would channel any lava flow safely to the sea. This fatal miscalculation would seal the city's doom. The residents, trapped by a false sense of security, awaited their fate. On the morning of May 8th, Ascension Day, the apocalypse arrived. Just before 8 o'clock, the side of Mount Pelée tore open. It was not a conventional eruption of lava and ash rising vertically. Instead, the volcano unleashed a pyroclastic flow, a superheated, incandescent cloud of gas, ash, and rock, heavier than air and moving at hurricane speeds. This dense, glowing avalanche, with temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, detached from the summit and raced down the slopes directly towards the unsuspecting city of Saint-Pierre. The destruction was instantaneous and absolute. The cloud swept through the city in less than 2 minutes, a wave of incinerating death. Stone walls vaporized, rum barrels exploded, sending rivers of burning liquid through the streets. Ships anchored in the harbor were capsized and set ablaze. The 30,000 inhabitants of Saint-Pierre were killed almost instantly, their lungs seared by the superheated gas, their bodies carbonized by the intense heat. The Paris of the West Indies became a silent, smoldering necropolis. When rescue parties finally reached the ruins, they found a scene from Dante's Inferno. The entire city was flattened, buried under a thick layer of gray ash. The only signs of life were the distorted, charred remains of its people, frozen in their final moments. Amidst this total devastation, only 2, perhaps 3 individuals are thought to have survived. The most famous was Louis-Auguste Paris, a prisoner who was saved by the thick stone walls of his partially underground solitary confinement cell. The eruption of Mount Pelée was a tragedy of immense human cost, but it also became a pivotal moment for the science of volcanology. It introduced the world to the terrifying phenomenon of the pyroclastic flow, or nuée ardente, the glowing cloud, as it was named. It was a brutal lesson in the diverse and deadly ways a volcano can erupt, and a horrifying example of how human denial and political expediency, when faced with the clear and present warnings of nature, can lead to a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Our journey takes us deep into the past, to the Bronze Age around 1600 BCE. In the Aegean Sea, the Minoan civilization flourished. Centered on the island of Crete, they were a remarkable people, master seafarers, talented artists, and builders of magnificent palaces like Knossos. Theirs was a sophisticated and seemingly peaceful society, its power projected not by armies, but by trade and cultural influence across the Mediterranean. But their world existed in the shadow of a colossal geological power. About 100 kilometers north of Crete, the island of Thera, known today as Santorini. To the Minoans, It was a vital trading outpost. But Thera was not just an island, it was the exposed rim of a massive, active volcano. For centuries it had been dormant, allowing a vibrant settlement to grow within its caldera. In the middle of the second millennium BCE, after a series of warning earthquakes that prompted its inhabitants to flee, the volcano awoke with a violence that defies imagination. The eruption of Thera was one of the largest volcanic events in human history. It began with a towering plume of ash and pumice ejected tens of kilometers into the stratosphere, turning day into night across the eastern Mediterranean. The Minoan settlement at Akrotiri on Thera itself was entombed, perfectly preserved beneath a thick blanket of volcanic debris, a Bronze Age Pompeii. But this was only the beginning. The eruption's climax was the collapse of the volcano's caldera into the sea. This collapse displaced a colossal volume of water, generating a series of immense tsunamis that radiated outwards across the Aegean. Waves, perhaps tens of meters high, raced southwards towards the northern coast of Crete, the heartland of the Minoan civilization. With no natural barriers to slow them, these walls of water would have smashed into the coastal towns, harbors, and palaces. The Minoan fleet, the very source of their wealth and power, would have been obliterated in minutes, either at sea or in their anchorages. The devastation on Crete would have been catastrophic. Fertile coastal plains, vital for agriculture, would have been inundated with salt water and buried under layers of volcanic sludge. The economic and logistical backbone of the civilization was broken. The sky, darkened by the ash cloud, would have brought on a volcanic winter, causing crop failures and famine. The psychological impact on a people who worshipped nature deities must have been profound, a sense of divine abandonment. While the civilization did not vanish overnight, the eruption of Thera was a mortal blow from which the Minoans never recovered. Their palaces were destroyed, their trade networks shattered, and their population weakened. Within a few generations, the once mighty Minoan culture faded, becoming vulnerable to invasion from the mainland Greeks, the Mycenaeans, who eventually took control of Crete. The memory of this advanced civilization was largely lost to time. It is this cataclysm, an advanced island civilization suddenly vanishing beneath the waves and fire, that many scholars believe gave rise to one of our most enduring legends, the story of Atlantis. Plato's account of a mighty island empire that angered the gods and was destroyed in a single day and night of misfortune bears a striking resemblance to the fate of Minoan Thera. It is a powerful thought that the echo of this real-world cataclysm has resonated through millennia, transformed into a myth that continues to captivate us to this day. We move forward in time to 1815, to the island of Sumbawa in what is now Indonesia. Here stood Mount Tambora, a volcano that, for the people living on its fertile slopes, had been a quiet giant. In April of that year, it awoke from its long slumber to produce the largest and most violent volcanic eruption in recorded history. The cataclysm that followed would not only devastate the region, but would profoundly alter the climate of the entire planet. The eruption began on April 5th with thunderous explosions that were mistaken for cannon fire by British officials over 1,000 kilometers away. But the main event occurred 5 days later, on the evening of April 10th. The mountain effectively blew itself apart in a paroxysm of fury. A column of ash, gas, and rock was blasted more than 40 kilometers into the sky, deep into the stratosphere. The energy released was equivalent to many thousands of atomic bombs, a force that reduced the mountain's height by over a kilometer. For those on the island of Sumbawa and its neighbors, the immediate effects were apocalyptic. Pyroclastic flows, similar to those at Mount Pelée, but on an immensely larger scale, scoured the flanks of Tambora, annihilating every village in their path. The entire peninsula was sterilized. An estimated 10,000 people were killed instantly. The eruption also triggered tsunamis that swept the coasts of nearby islands, adding thousands more to the death toll. The sky was plunged into absolute darkness for days. In the weeks and months that followed, the true scale of the local tragedy became apparent. Thick layers of ash blanketed hundreds of thousands of square kilometers, destroying all vegetation and contaminating water sources. This led to a devastating famine and rampant disease, which ultimately claimed the lives of at least another 80,000 people in the region. The kingdom of Tambora, which had existed at the foot of the volcano, was wiped from existence, its language and culture erased from history forever. But Tambora's impact was not confined to the Indonesian archipelago. The colossal amount of sulfur dioxide ejected into the stratosphere formed a veil of sulfate aerosols that encircled the globe. This veil reflected sunlight back into space, causing a dramatic and widespread drop in global temperatures. The world was about to experience a period of extreme climate disruption, a volcanic winter on a planetary scale. The year 1816 became known in the Northern Hemisphere as the year without a summer. In Europe and North America, a persistent dry fog hung in the air, the sun was dimmed, and summer frosts and snows were reported in June, July, and August. Crops failed on a massive scale, leading to the worst famine of the 19th century. Food riots broke out across Europe, people starved. It was a time of immense social unrest and mass migration. This global climatic anomaly had profound and unexpected cultural consequences. The relentless gloom and rain of that non-summer in Switzerland famously led Mary Shelley, trapped indoors with her literary companions, to write her Gothic masterpiece, Frankenstein. The atmospheric effects, the spectacular, lurid sunsets caused by the stratospheric dust, are thought to have influenced the dramatic skies painted by the artist J.M.W. Turner. Tambora demonstrates, perhaps more than any other event, how a single geological event on one side of the world can have devastating and far-reaching consequences for all of humanity. On March 18, 1925, the weather over the central United States was unsettled, but not unusually so for early spring. A low-pressure system was moving across the region, a common ingredient for severe storms. No one could have predicted that this system would spawn a monster, a meteorological anomaly of such scale and ferocity that it would set a benchmark for destruction against which all other tornadoes are measured. This was the day of the tri-state tornado. It began its life in the rugged terrain of southeastern Missouri, touching down around 1 o'clock in the afternoon near the town of Ellington. From the outset, it was different. Most tornadoes are visible as a distinct V-shaped funnel cloud, but this one was enormous. A low-slung, churning mass of black cloud and debris so vast it was often described by survivors as a rolling fog or boiling clouds on the ground. Its true nature was horrifically deceptive, giving people precious little time to seek shelter. For the next 3.5 hours, the tornado carved a continuous path of utter devastation for 352 kilometers, an unbroken track of destruction across 3 states, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. Its forward speed was terrifyingly fast, averaging nearly 100 kilometers per hour, and at times reaching over 115. It moved with the speed of an express train, relentlessly consuming everything in its path. It was a supercell storm of the highest order, maintaining its integrity and power for an unprecedented duration. The tornado crossed the Mississippi River and slammed into southern Illinois, where it would inflict its deadliest blows. The towns of Gorham, Murfreesboro, and DeSoto were virtually obliterated. In Murfreesboro, entire neighborhoods were wiped from the map in minutes. Schoolhouses filled with children were demolished. The storm's winds, estimated to have reached F5 intensity, the highest on the Fujita scale, were capable of scouring pavement from roads and debarking trees. The sheer violence was incomprehensible. The human toll was staggering. In Murfreesboro alone, 234 people were killed, the highest death toll for a single community from a tornado in U.S. history. The storm continued its rampage into Indiana, devastating the towns of Griffin and Princeton before finally dissipating. When the silence fell, the scale of the tragedy was revealed. At least 695 people were dead, more than 2,000 were injured, and 15,000 homes were destroyed. It remains, by a wide margin, the deadliest single tornado in the history of the United States. The tri-state tornado was more than just a powerful storm, it was a phenomenon. Its extraordinary path length, its long duration, and its incredible speed set it apart. In its wake, it left not only a trail of physical destruction, but also a deep psychological scar on the region. The sheer randomness and speed of the event highlighted the terrifying power of atmospheric forces when conditions align in a perfect, deadly combination. The event also served as a critical, albeit brutal, impetus for change. In the years that followed, the lack of any warning system became a major focus. The tragedy of 1925 helped to spur the research and development that would eventually lead to modern tornado forecasting, the establishment of warning sirens, and the tornado watch and tornado warning systems we rely on today. It was a lesson paid for at an almost unbearable price, a reminder that even the air we breathe can, on rare occasions, become our most violent and unpredictable enemy. In the late summer of 1859, the sun, our life-giving star, was approaching the peak of its 11-year cycle of activity. On its surface, vast, dark sunspots churned with immense magnetic energy. One of these sunspot regions, visible even to the naked eye at sunrise and sunset, was the crucible for an event that would unleash the sun's fury upon our planet in a way never before experienced in the modern era. This was the Carrington event. On September 1st, a British amateur astronomer named Richard Carrington was in his private observatory, sketching the unusual cluster of sunspots. Suddenly, he witnessed two patches of intensely brilliant white light erupt from the sunspot group. It was a solar flare, a massive explosion on the sun's surface. What Carrington had just observed for the very first time was a white light flare, the most energetic class of all. He had seen the firing of a celestial cannon, and the Earth was directly in its path. The flare hurled a cloud of magnetized plasma, a coronal mass ejection, directly at our planet. This cloud traveled at an astonishing speed, covering the 150 million kilometer distance to Earth in just over 17 hours, a journey that normally takes 3 to 4 days. Our planet's magnetic shield, the magnetosphere, was about to receive a direct and overwhelming blow from this solar tsunami. The impact was immediate and spectacular. On the night of September 1st and 2nd, the skies erupted in light. Auroras, the northern and southern lights, which are normally confined to the polar regions, were seen all over the world. They were so brilliant in the Rocky Mountains that miners reportedly woke up and started making breakfast believing it was dawn. People in the Caribbean and even as far south as Colombia reported seeing reddish glows in the sky. The celestial display was breathtaking, a beautiful and yet deeply ominous sign of the immense energy bombarding our planet. But this was more than just a light show. The geomagnetic storm induced powerful electrical currents in the nascent technological nervous system of the planet, the telegraph network. The system went into chaos. Telegraph pylons threw sparks, and operators received electric shocks. Some telegraph papers spontaneously caught fire. The induced currents were so strong that many operators were able to disconnect their batteries and continue transmitting messages using only the auroral current flowing through the wires. The world of 1859 was only just beginning its reliance on electricity. The telegraph was the most advanced technology of the day. The Carrington event gave a stark and dramatic warning of the sun's potential to disrupt and destroy our technological infrastructure. It was a shot across the bow, an illustration of a vulnerability that would only grow exponentially in the centuries to come. The world's electrical grid was, at the time, small and robust. Imagine for a moment a storm of this magnitude striking our world today. A world utterly dependent on a delicate and interconnected web of satellites for communication and navigation, a global power grid for our homes and industries, and the internet for our economy and information. The consequences would be catastrophic on a global scale. The Carrington event is not just a historical curiosity, it is a prophecy, a chilling reminder that the sun, the source of all life on Earth, also possesses the power to plunge our modern civilization back into darkness. I have shown you but a handful of the moments when the Earth or the cosmos has flexed its awesome power. From the Siberian skyfire to the ash of Tambora, from the winds of the plains to the rage of a volcano, these events are etched into my memory. Yet in the wake of every flattened forest and buried city, a remarkable story unfolds, the story of resilience. Life, in its tenacious drive to continue, reclaims the land. And humanity, though knocked to its knees, invariably rises again. We rebuild, we mourn, we learn, and we endure. This capacity for recovery, for finding strength in the midst of ruin, is as profound a force as any cataclysm. Each of these disasters, in its own terrible way, has been a teacher. The silent ruins of Saint-Pierre taught us to respect the whispers of a restless mountain. The unbroken tornado track across 3 states spurred the creation of systems to warn us of the wind's approach. The Carrington storm revealed a cosmic vulnerability we are only now beginning to truly comprehend. These are brutal, costly lessons, paid for in lives and livelihoods, but they have pushed our understanding forward, compelling us to study, to prepare, and to innovate in the hope of mitigating the fury of the next inevitable event. Yet, for all our science and all our history, we remain inhabitants of a world whose fundamental powers are beyond our control. We can predict, and we can prepare, but we cannot tame a volcano, halt a solar storm, or divert an asteroid. We live our lives on a thin, fragile crust, suspended over a core of molten rock, adrift in a cosmic firing range. The stories of these great catastrophes are not just tales of the past. They are echoes of the future, a humbling and perpetual reminder of the immense, unpredictable, and untamable power of the planet we call home.